Hello and welcome to Straight Onto Disney, a Disney deep dive and analysis podcast, where each week I, your host Jonathan, takes a deep dive into the history of each Disney film and the legacy that they left behind. I'd like to remind you that you can follow me on Instagram at StraightOntoDisneyPod, and you can email me your thoughts at straightontodisneypod@gmail.com. Hello and welcome to this week's Straight Onto Disney Pod, where I'm going to be having a bit of a natter about different things that have been coming when it comes to the films recently at Disney. And to be honest, it's more going to be about Avengers Doomsday this episode than I think some of the other things. But I kind of find it interesting that we've had two teaser trailers in the last week or so for two films that are releasing in 2027, and the two big films that Disney still have for 2026 barely have teaser trailers. So I kind of just find it interesting that that's where we're at currently when it comes to these films. So that leads me on nicely to mousekeeping. And the main bulk of mousekeeping this week is that Disney Pixar's next feature, Gatto, which stars Mark Ruffalo as the titular cat, has its teaser trailer. And it looks like a really interesting and fun story that I don't know too much about. But ultimately, it's done in a new animation style that's really unique to the film, which is wonderful to see. And it's, once again, set in Italy for Pixar. And it kind of started this thing for me over the last few days of questions about the way that Disney's marketing certain releases, certain films. Primarily the fact that we still have no Hexed teaser trailer for a film that's releasing in November and is the Thanksgiving weekend film. And if you don't really know how Disney normally work, Disney normally have a release Thanksgiving weekend. So, for example, Frozen's been one, Big Hero 6, Wreck-It Ralph, Frozen 2. So they generally have that release date slot. And obviously Zootopia 2 was last year's Thanksgiving release, which was incredible. But there's still no teaser trailer for a film that releases in 5 months. And ultimately is like Disney's big release. And if we go back to last year at the little upfronts that Disney had in California, and we got to hear a lot more about what they were going to do with the film, the fact that they were hyping this original film, and now there seems to be a lot of nothing. It's really interesting to see that that's where we're kind of sitting when it comes to that film, and I just don't understand what's going on, especially when the fact that this film releases in less than 6 months and there's been no push, and clearly there'll be a massive push at D23, but it kind of feels a bit late in the game for a teaser trailer. Whereas if you compare it to Zootopia 2 last year, Zootopia 2's teaser trailer came out in May, and then we got the official trailer at D23, well, the mini D23 they had last year, and then obviously you got your teaser spots, your TV spots. So ultimately, it kind of feels like there was a much bigger push on Zootopia 2, which is kind of part of why I believe it did so well at the box office last year, is because of how well the marketing was and how well they'd handled it. And it kind of feels like they've lost the momentum, and the Hexed, it kind of feels like it's just getting lost away. And I also wonder if that's down to the fact that the focus of the film is now a mother and daughter relationship compared to having a mother and son relationship, which I ultimately think is a bit of a disappointment, just because Disney has a long history of mother-daughter dynamics. There's not many mother-son dynamics, and the idea of witchcraft and stuff. So I kind of feel like they're fumbling when it comes to that. And then this also kind of applies to Avengers Doomsday in respect, in that the marketing isn't great, and I don't think the PR fiasco last weekend over the Doomsday coffee has kind of helped reassure fans that this film's in safe hands. It's kind of like where is a trailer? Because the problem I have with Avengers Doomsday currently, and ultimately is why I'm a bit like, I'm on the fence of how I feel about the film, is I don't get what the story is. And what I mean by that is clearly understandable incursions. The incursions are going to happen across the film, and it's also kind of not their fault because they weren't intending to build to Doomsday. Kind of feels like the post-credits and stuff aren't building towards this, so you don't really have this tease of this imposing threat. And I wonder if they're going to play with that a bit more in the film, understandably. I'm not going to discuss a lot of the stuff that I've seen online, through threads and certain stuff. But from a writing point of view, as an aspiring writer for across the stage of screen, not being able to understand exactly what the story of this film is, despite the fact this film comes out in 6 months, it kind of feels like it's gonna fumble. Yes, it's gonna make incredible money at the box office, which kind of needs for Marvel at this point in time. But ultimately, is the story going to be right? Is the question. That's my biggest thing. And once I start understanding what the story of this film is, that clearly Stephen McFeely came back to write and is now getting help from Michael Baldwin. I just need a bit more of understanding, because yes, you can have these incredible fights that people have been raving about, and you can have these really cool interactions between a lot of older X-Men characters, and you can have them. I'm not going to say exactly the fights. I'm sure if you've heard or read the descriptions of the CinemaCon trailer, you'll know which fights I'm on about, and I'm not going to into the CinemaCon trailer fights, because I'm sure you know what I'm talking about and where to find reports of what exactly that is. However, it kind of feels like, what is the overarching story that allows for these events to occur? And I feel like once I have an understanding of what that is, I'll be better, more excited for this film, compared to the fact that right now I'm concerned that it could feel like cameo fest. I'm concerned the direction doesn't feel right, and I'm just concerned that there's so much loose ends that they're gonna have to come in and tie up and ultimately resurrect. And sadly, I'm just not sure at the moment with Avengers Doomsday and where it's gonna lead. And ultimately, I think the biggest problem I've had with Phase 456 is there was no Avengers film. And if I'm being truthfully honest, an Avengers Disassembled adaptation or a film like it could really have helped having Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness lead into an Avengers Disassembled type story. And if you understand from the comics, it's when the Scarlet Witch snaps, wants to have her kids back. You could have tailored that to the end to set up the next big Avengers film, done all that, what you wanted to do with the Scarlet Witch as a villain there, and allow for that redemption arc to occur over the next few films, potentially. But it also would have made the Thunderbolts a bit more realistic and why the Thunderbolts are coming. Because I remember when the Thunderbolts got announced, it was like, in a world where there's no Avengers, but there are Avengers because they're still all there. So if there'd been this big massive thing where the world had seen that the Avengers had disassembled, which has led to the chaos, so that it kind of would have made a bit more sense. I think structurally and narratively, I think Marvel understands they've made fumbles. Secret Invasion is definitely one of them, and that's frustrating itself. And I think right now they need to get fans back on board with what they want to do going down the line. And I think certainly, but I think the biggest problem I have now is nothing feels connected. There's a space crisis going on, but we're not acknowledging it in any of the releases following Thunderbolts. We don't know when things are set, what times and stuff. So ultimately, it's a bit of a weird one, and I'm kind of just confused in how Disney's approaching some of these releases and some of the trailers and stuff. So it's an interesting one, and I think the thing is, if these two films are going to be compared to Infinity War and Endgame, and I think Infinity War worked so much better as a film because you had that little bit of build up. Yes, you didn't understand the entirety of why Thanos was doing what he was doing at first, but you understood he wants the stones. This is a film where we're going to fight over the stones, and then you're not expecting him to win. And I think if certain characters do die in Doomsday and Secret Wars, are they going to feel as important and as effective as Gamora's death, as Vision's death, and obviously, if you've never seen Infinity War and Endgame, there are spoilers here. I'm sure you understand that by now. So yeah, it's a bit of a weird one at this current time and where we're looking at when it comes to Avengers films. And I think as soon as a trailer is released to the general audience, and not just the people who work in trades and the people who are in the rooms, I think I'll have a much better way of thinking. So yeah, hopefully I want it to do well. I want it to be this incredible spectacle of a film. And I think I just need to know what the narrative focus of this film is, and to be shown it rather than being told that this is what's going to happen. Exec. So yeah, that's where I'm going to leave this week's podcast. And as always, it's a nice little short one. We will be getting back to regular scheduling with the 101 Dalmatians soon. But it's been nice doing these little smallery things over the last few weeks. So, as always, you can follow me on Instagram at straightontodisneypod. You can email me your thoughts at straightontodisneypod@gmail.com. Like this video, subscribe for more, put in your comments how you're feeling about everything that I've discussed in this week's podcast, Doomsday thoughts, where you're at, and obviously go and watch last week's Cars anniversary episode with me and Tom because it was such a fun one, and go back and watch some of the older videos and original podcast episodes if you want to listen to it in audio form. Spotify, Apple, go for long on there. And yeah, I think it's an interesting time for the Disney company, and I do think some trailers would go a long way in maybe reassuring some audiences. So thank you all for listening, and bye.